Hi, this is Judson. I'm going to cover a few of the features of jQuery Mobile and just some standard techniques that you would use to have a nice, clean UI. So this is a little app that I've done on my website. It's a little mobile app, mobile web app. It also can be packaged in PhoneGap, which is nice and works just the same. But what I want to show here is just how nice the color scheme is, how smooth the layout looks, how smooth the transitions are, things like that. Now, looking at these transitions, these are not native to the jQuery mobile library. These are things that I had to go in and actually write small functions to accomplish. These are all by using the slide toggle function, which is not built into jQuery mobile. This dialog is built into jQuery mobile. This is a standard transition. One of the things I want to cover before I go into code. Transition should typically be gone from left to right and then back from right to left, so the user knows, hey, I've drilled down into some content, but I'm going back up to where I was. You should never do all your transitions the same direction because it gets people confused about where they are. As far as my events tab, I have responsive design here with my graphic. This is a very common thing that people do to try to save money, actually, is that, hey, we'll build one layout, but it will be responsive for different devices. So if I'm on an iPad, for example, I can get this nice big layout as opposed to the phone. So this is something, this is sort of a technique that takes a little while to master, but once you get it down, it's very useful. If you look right here, one of the things I want to implement, this is a new technology with the I don't want to say new technology, but a new trend is that people are using these left to right scrolling type things. So if you have items you want to show, this actually will work. Swipe through my favorite guitars with your thumb. If you work on the iPad with it or the iPhone, you can swipe these with your fingers using touch events. And I use an external library to make that happen. And again, with the contact thing, I needed something that on an iPad device, now notice this window's too big, but on an iPad, or I'm sorry, on an iPhone, it's actually going to scroll up just like you saw there. And then with this menu, I wanted to toggle more and less. So if I refresh, more, less, more, less. So going to the code here, I'm going to go briefly over this. I'm going to assume that you already know some jQuery. I just want to sort of show you how I structured this. Now if you notice, I had some custom buttons. I created a custom button.css, and in order to use custom buttons, the standard buttons are used by calling data icon attribute and then putting the name of the icon that you want to use. Now what I did was I wanted to have a Facebook and Twitter icon, so what I did was I call Facebook. In order to do that, I had to link up to the Facebook icon, which is right here, and I simply call UI-icon-Facebook. So as long as you prefix all of them with UI-icon-, you can use this attribute selector. And that's pretty much it for calling custom icons. Now going back up to the search box, actually we'll go down here to more since we're already here. If you notice, when I did the view more, we had the little box that was coming up in and out, and all I'm doing here is I wrote a function called toggle box. I want to display the div more options, and I'm passing the element into it. So if I go to the function, it's nothing more than a few lines of code here. I'm basically saying 1 to show dot height equals 1 to show dot height. Now this is a little fix that I do basically because typically any elements that you have that have dynamic content don't yet really have a height because they're not displayed yet. So if you have a hidden element that's loading some content, the element, because it's hidden, doesn't technically have any height to it yet. So what we have to do to work around that is this. Now you ask, well, why is that? The reason why is because when you go from 0 to, let's say, 200 pixels, when you're displaying something using the slide toggle, it gives you that nice slide down animation, which we'll go back to here. And need to find that link here. I'm trying to guess at it. There we go. See how that slides up and down really nicely? Without knowing a set height on an element like that, it's not going to do that. It's just going to go in, out, like show and blind, a basic show and blind, or a basic show and hide. So this solves that problem. The second thing I'm doing is I'm changing the icon class from arrow up to arrow down, just using toggle method. And then lastly, I'm doing one to show, which is the div element that I wanted to show the contents of, slide toggle. That's what gives you that nice little slide effect. Now the other thing I'm doing is I'm changing the more and less. Now with jQuery mobile, you tend to have to go in and find these things, and I'm going to resize this window so you can see the console here. Firebug is a very useful tool as far as going in and analyzing the HTML. What they do is they throw in these spans. So you can see right here that it threw in a span UI button text. So by seeing this UI button text, I know that I can use that as my selector, calling that class, and I can change the text. And that's just what I did. Basically, close that out. I went in here and I said, if element.find UI-button.text.html equals more, change it to less, and then vice versa. So that'll all toggle together nicely as you see in the example. And we'll just go back to that one more time. More and less. Now, keep in mind that that's pretty advanced for that functionality, but I'm also doing that with this, which is very basic. But contact is a little different. With contact, I wanted to have this scroll up into view almost as if it's its own page. Now the way I did that was I used a different selector method and actually went with their inherited method, or their native method that they use in the library, called data transition. And what I did was I used data transition blind. So with that selector, I basically came up with data transition blind die.live. I do this to stop any propagation from occurring, and I also put in the methods for stopping propagation here. These are sort of buggy in Internet Explorer, but this definitely takes care of the problem right away. And what I do basically is I set my scroll coordinates. I set the one I'm going to show, which is the div I want to show the content of, and then what effect do I want to use. Well, in this case, we showed it was blind. That's what I'm going to pull off of the attribute. So one to show height fix that I explained earlier, and then each span that comes out of that, if it has a UI icon of arrow down, I want to change it and make it an arrow up. So if you go back to here, arrow down, arrow up, and then this closest li add class UI button active add focus. So basically what's happening with that is it's making that bar blue, because that's the bar we're on. And then I just do the reverse of it for the toggle. Now down here it gets a little more tricky. If one to show is hidden, if that div is hidden, which it is initially, I set a scroll top coordinate to be whatever the position of the contact div based on its anchor minus the height of it. Now what that does is it basically tells this blue bar to, hey, stop when you get to the top of this thing. It's allowing just enough room for the header at that point. And here's where I do the animation for it. HTML body stop animate scroll top coordinate. Now if we're closing it, we simply just want to scroll back down to 0. So if I go back here and look, boom, we're back down to where we need to be. So again, that's pretty much it for responsive, nice, clean mobile web design. You always want to build. It's easy for developers to take for granted the usability, but I always try to think of if a child or if a average consumer or somebody that's not very computer savvy was going to go in and use my app, what would I want to do to make it very intuitive? So I try to think of some of the simple, like, video game layouts, things like that. Just anything I can that'll help me try to be as simplistic as possible, but yet have that nice advanced touch. So I hope you like my tutorial, and have a good day.